Remember when the Golden Girls made four women in a Miami living room feel like the funniest, sharpest, most fearless people on television? From 1985 to 1992, Dorothy, Rose, Blanche, and Sophia served up cheesecake, one-liners, and life lessons like it was the easiest thing in the world. It was warm, it was witty, it was perfect. Or at least, that is what it looked like on screen. Behind the wicker furniture and the pastel bathrobes, things were a lot stranger than most viewers ever realized. Today, we are counting down 15 weird and wonderful facts about the Golden Girls. We are talking a housekeeper who vanished after episode 1, a queen who demanded her own private show, and a nickname so nasty we can barely say it out loud. And trust us, you are not ready for what is near the top of this list. So hit that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and drop a comment with your favorite Sophia Zinger. Now, let us get into the countdown with number 15. Number 15. The show was born out of a joke. The Golden Girls, one of the most beloved sitcoms of the 80s, did not start with a big pitch meeting, a novel, or some brilliant screenwriter locked in a room with a typewriter. It started with a bit, a 1-minute skit, a punchline that was never even supposed to become anything. In August of 1984, NBC was throwing a big promotional event to introduce advertisers to its upcoming fall lineup. Two of the network's own actresses, Selma Diamond from Night Court and Doris Roberts from Remington Steele, were brought on stage to hype up a new show called Miami Vice. And in classic Selma Diamond deadpan, she pretended to mishear the title. Instead of Miami Vice, she said, she thought it was called Miami Nice, a show about a bunch of old people in Miami playing pinochle. The audience howled. NBC Senior Vice President Warren Littlefield was sitting in that crowd, and something in his brain lit up. What if there really was a show like that? A comedy about older women in Florida, cracking jokes and refusing to fade quietly into their retirement communities. A few weeks later, producers Paul Jungerwitt and Tony Thomas came in pitching a series about a female lawyer. Littlefield passed on the lawyer show, but pulled a classic executive move. He said, "How about you write me Miami Nice instead?" They handed the idea to writer Susan Harris, who had semi-retired after Soap. She read the concept, saw the potential nobody else was chasing, and started writing about women in their 60s. And here is the weird part. NBC originally wanted the characters to be around 40. Harris quietly ignored the note, aged them up 2 decades, and delivered a pilot that turned into one of the highest-rated shows on television, all because of a joke about card-playing seniors that nobody expected to survive the night. Number 14. There was a forgotten 5th Golden Girl. If you sit down and re-watch the very first episode of The Golden Girls, something is going to feel off. There is an extra person in the house. A tall, sarcastic gay housekeeper named Coco, played by actor Charles Levin, wandering around the kitchen serving drinks, stirring pots, and quietly stealing the odd scene. And then, poof, Coco is gone. Never mentioned again. Not written out, not moved to Chicago, not killed off in some tragic off-screen sandwich accident, just erased from the entire universe of the show. So what happened? Coco was always meant to be a major character. NBC President Brandon Tartikoff personally suggested Charles Levin for the role after seeing his groundbreaking gay character on Hill Street Blues, and producers loved the idea of having an out-and-proud gay man as one of the core housemates in 1985. That would have been genuinely revolutionary for network television. The problem was math. The pilot came in 5 minutes over its allotted runtime, and something had to go. Editors started slicing scenes, and unfortunately, almost everything Coco did wound up on the cutting room floor. By the time the final pilot aired, he was basically just serving drinks and disappearing between commercial breaks. Meanwhile, Estelle Getty's Sophia, who had originally been written as an occasional guest character, was tearing up every scene she appeared in. The audience adored her. Test screenings went through the roof. So producers made a cold calculation. Sophia stayed, and Coco was quietly removed from the show forever. Charles Levin never appeared as the character again, and the Golden Girls became a foursome instead of a fivesome. Sometimes greatness happens because 5 minutes had to be trimmed off a pilot, and Sophia Petrillo happened to be standing in the right kitchen. Number 13. Betty White was never supposed to play Rose. Picture this. You get the script for a new NBC sitcom. You flip to your character description, and it says, man hungry, flirtatious, cannot walk past a mailman without proposing marriage. If you are Betty White, that role has your name all over it. You spent the 70s playing the deliciously scandalous Sue Ann Nivens on The Mary Tyler Moore Show, and everyone in Hollywood already types you as that character. So when producers first cast Betty White in The Golden Girls, they put her exactly where you would expect. As Blanche Devereaux, the Southern belle who never met a bedroom she did not want to redecorate. Meanwhile, Rue McClanahan was slated to play sweet, dim-witted Rose Nylund, the kind of naive small-town lady she had already perfected as Vivian Harmon on Maude. Two actresses stepping right back into the boxes Hollywood had built for them. But then the pilot's director, Jay Sandrich, took one look at that lineup and raised his hand. Sandrich was worried that Betty as Blanche was just going to feel like Sue Ann in a wig. Same character, same jokes, same rhythm. And when Rue read for Blanche one afternoon with a full Southern drawl, he could suddenly see it clearly. This was the smarter, riskier version of the show. Sandrich pulled Betty and Rue aside and asked if they would consider switching. Rue was thrilled. Betty, according to her own memoir, was heartsick. She wanted Blanche. She had already been playing Blanche in her head for weeks, but she trusted Sandrich, said yes, and rewired her entire performance in a matter of days. It is one of those tiny, invisible decisions that changes television history, because if that swap had never happened, we would have gotten a Betty White we had already seen and lost a Rose Nylund we never even knew we needed. Number 12. Blanche's Southern accent was a smuggled-in gift. Here is a fact that even the most obsessive Golden Girls fans sometimes get wrong. Blanche Devereaux, the queen of Miami charm, honey-dipped vowels, and every syllable stretched out like taffy, was not written that way. Nowhere in the original pilot script did it say that Blanche needed to be Southern at all. In fact, the pilot's director, Jay Sandrich, told Rue McClanahan to drop the accent she had developed in auditions and to use her natural Oklahoma voice instead, which is a real voice. But it is not exactly the voice we now associate with a woman who once seduced 3 of her deceased husband's cousins at the wake. Sandrich felt the accent was too much, too theatrical, too Blanche Dubois, too on the nose. So Rue reluctantly played the pilot pretty straight. Then something interesting happened. Once the show was picked up as a series, a new director stepped in for the ongoing episodes. His name was Paul Bogart, and he had the exact opposite opinion. He asked Rue to bring the accent back. Rue did not just bring it back, she weaponized it. In her own words, Blanche believed a strong Southern accent was sexy and strong and attractive to men. So Rue leaned into the vowels, the honey, the dramatic pauses, the little breathless flutters. And what makes it even funnier, none of that would have happened if she had listened to the pilot director. That accent, that voice, that walk, the whole Blanche package we now think of as iconic, was basically Rue quietly deciding, "I know better than the memo." And she absolutely did. What makes it even better, Rue was not actually from the Deep South at all. She was born in Hilton, Oklahoma. So the entire Southern Belle mythology of Blanche Devereaux was invented by an Oklahoma girl on the fly, over the head of a director who told her to knock it off. Number 11. Sophia was a year younger than her own daughter. This is one of those Golden Girls facts that sounds like a trivia team's dirty trick. Estelle Getty, who played the ancient, wisecracking Sicilian mother Sophia Petrillo, was in real life younger than the actress who played her daughter. And not by a few months, by an entire year. When the show premiered on September 14, 1985, Estelle Getty was 62 years old. Bea Arthur, who played her daughter, was 63. Betty White was also 63. Rue McClanahan, the youngest, was 51. So Sophia, the wrinkled Sicilian grandmother we all pictured shuffling in with her straw handbag and her opinions about everything, was actually the second youngest actress on the show. To get her looking around 80, the hair and makeup team had to build a Sophia from scratch every single day. A white curly wig, oversized glasses, layered wrinkles, heavy makeup that took anywhere from 45 minutes to nearly 3 hours to apply, depending on the season and the shot. Getty famously threw herself into the transformation. During auditions, she reportedly told her makeup artist, "To you, this is just a job. To me, it is my entire career down the toilet, unless you make me look 80. She got the part. And here is the twist. Sophia may have been the oldest character in the house, but Estelle was younger than the woman playing her own kid. And the audience never knew that the Miami senior citizen tossing insults at Dorothy was, technically, the child in that pairing. And here is one more detail most fans miss. Bea Arthur and Estelle Getty, the most iconic Italian mother and daughter in 80s television, were both actually Jewish. They were doing a fictional Sicilian family every week, and they were so good at it that fans grew up assuming they were straight out of Palermo. Number 10. The kitchen table had only 3 chairs. Go back and watch any of the countless kitchen scenes on The Golden Girls. Really look at the table. There are only 3 chairs. Not 4, not 5, 3. In a house where 4 housemates spend 98% of their emotional lives sitting around that table eating cheesecake and dragging each other into arguments about herring, there are only 3 chairs. And no, this was not a set design mistake. It was a very deliberate choice. The reason comes down to camera blocking. If the set had a 4th chair, one of the 4 women would either end up with her back to the camera, or all 4 would be crammed shoulder to shoulder on one side of it. Either way, it looked wrong on television. So the show simply built a 3-chair kitchen and kept whichever character was 4th up and moving. Cooking at the stove, leaning on the fridge, walking to the coffee pot. The show still got its physical comedy, and every scene stayed alive. And here is the extra weird part. Bea also generally got the center chair whenever she did sit down. That was the sweet spot for reactions, for punchlines, for the little slow head turns that made her deadpan land. Look at those famous, endlessly reposted kitchen photos of the 4 women together, and you will notice a subtle staging trick. Bea is usually the anchor. The other 3 orbit her. That is not accidental. It is a whole geometry of comedy that started with a very simple decision to leave a chair out of the set. It also solved a practical problem. 4 chairs around a small round table would have felt cramped. 3 left the space open, warm, and cinematic. And once you notice the 3 chairs, you cannot unnotice it. Someone leans on the counter, someone opens the cheesecake box, and Bea just moves. A tiny design choice that quietly shaped every kitchen scene of the show. Number 9. The Miami house was not in Miami. So the entire premise of the Golden Girls is that these 4 women live together in a warm, breezy, tropical Miami home with palm trees, pastel walls, and Blanche's endlessly redecorated bedroom. Everything about it screams South Florida, except the house itself. It was not in Miami. It was not in Florida. It was in Los Angeles. The exterior we all know so well, that ranch-style house with the white walls, the palm trees, the little archway leading to the front door, is located at 245 North Saltaire Avenue in Brentwood. That is West Los Angeles, roughly 3,000 miles from any actual beach in Miami. The producers used it in the first 2 seasons, and the interior was never once shot inside the real house. Then, in season 3, things got even weirder. Walt Disney World was in the process of building a new theme park called Disney MGM Studios in Orlando, Florida. They needed attractions. They needed real television magic that tourists could actually walk past. So Disney built an exact replica of the Golden Girls house, front porch and all, on something called Residential Street, and used it as a stop on the studio's backlot tour. From season 3 onward, whenever you saw the exterior of the ladies' home, you were actually looking at a Disney facade in Orlando, not the real Brentwood house at all. So the fictional Miami home was shot in Los Angeles, then rebuilt in Orlando, then eventually torn down in 2003 to make room for a stunt show. The Brentwood original is still standing, however, and reportedly sold a few years back for around $4 million, which, when you divide it 4 ways among the Golden Girls, comes out to $1 million per girl. Blanche would have absolutely approved. Number 8. The theme song was second choice. Try to imagine the Golden Girls without its theme song. You cannot. The opening notes of "Thank You for Being a Friend" are so tied to the show now that most fans could hum the entire tune on demand. But here is the thing. It was not the show's first pick. The producers actually wanted a completely different song. Bette Midler's Friends. It fit the tone perfectly. It was warm, it was famous, and it sounded exactly like what a show about 4 best friends should open with. There was just one problem. Licensing Bette Midler's Friends was outrageously expensive, and the show was still an unproven concept from a network that had only just gotten the pitch through the door. So somebody, quietly, mentioned another option. Andrew Gold's "Thank You for Being a Friend," a modest hit from 1978 that had been floating around the culture for a few years without ever really becoming a signature song. It was affordable, it was hopeful, and lyrically, it was almost too perfect to be true. The producers grabbed it. Then they hired a session singer named Cynthia Fee to record the version we all know today. Cynthia showed up, laid down the vocal in something like 20 or 30 minutes, and left the studio thinking it was just another workaday gig. She did not expect anything to come of it. Nobody did. And here is the weird part. Thanks to union rules, session singers get paid a royalty every single time the song is played on air. So when the Golden Girls became a hit, then a syndication smash, then a cable staple, then a streaming staple, then a permanent piece of television furniture forever, that one afternoon of studio work quietly turned into decades of steady checks. As one producer once put it, that random session in 1985 put Cynthia Fee's kids through college. Number 7. The Queen of Cheesecake could not stand cheesecake. Cheesecake is basically the 5th Golden Girl. It is on the counter. It is in the fridge. It is in the middle of the table at 3 in the morning, while 4 grown women debate their love lives with forks in their hands. By some estimates, the cast of the Golden Girls collectively consumed more than 100 cheesecakes over the show's 7-season run. Bakeries from all over the United States would even ship them to the studio as gifts, hoping their product would be featured on camera. It became such a huge part of the show's identity that just seeing a picture of a slice of cheesecake makes most fans think of Miami. And here is where it gets funny. Bea Arthur, who spent 7 years eating that cheesecake on camera, hated cheesecake in real life. Not disliked, not tolerated. Hated. Bea's own webmaster, Kevin Buckstiegel, confirmed years later that Bea genuinely could not stand it. Something about the texture, the sweetness, the density, or maybe just the sheer volume the writers kept forcing on her. 7 seasons of forkfuls into the same denser-than-a-bank vault dessert. Bea being Bea, she did not throw a fit. She just quietly powered through take after take of cheesecake she never wanted. On camera, she would take a bite, deliver a line, sigh, and roll her eyes at whatever Rose had just said. Off camera, she would rinse her mouth and swear like a sailor. What makes it even better, Betty White and Rue McClanahan actually loved cheesecake. Estelle Getty was fine with it too. So 3 of the 4 Golden Girls were basically at a nightly dessert party. And the 4th, the woman doing the sharpest close-up bite in the entire show, was in a very quiet, very deadpan hell. Only Bea Arthur could turn hating cheesecake into a 7-year performance. Okay, we have to take a quick pause here because if you are having as much fun with these behind-the-scenes stories as we are, do us a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and drop a comment telling us which fact so far has actually shocked you the most. And if there is a Golden Girls story you have heard that we absolutely have to cover next, put it down below too. We read every single one. All right, let us keep it going, because the top half of this countdown gets a lot stranger. Now, on with number 6. Number 6, Sophia's face was basically a special effects project. We already told you Estelle Getty was younger than her TV daughter, but that is only half the story. The other half is that turning her into Sophia was one of the most elaborate daily transformations on any sitcom of the era. Every single filming day, Estelle sat down in front of makeup artist Maurice Stein, and the process began. A white, curly wig, layers of foundation, prosthetic wrinkles applied and blended into her skin, extra shadows around the eyes to hollow them out, big, thick-framed glasses to soften the shape of her face. Even her posture had to shift. By the time she stood up from that chair, she was not Estelle anymore. She was Sophia. Fully. Voice, walk, attitude, all of it. Stein once said that when Estelle first sat down, she was just a nice, lovely lady. But as the makeup went on, she slouched deeper into the chair, got crustier, started tossing out one-liners, and by the end of the session, he had Sophia on his hands. Now, here is where it gets weird. The transformation originally took around 45 minutes. Manageable. Quick. But then Estelle went on hiatus after season 1 and, according to some crew members, came back looking noticeably younger. Reports at the time suggested she had gotten a facelift over the summer break, which was totally her business, except now the makeup team had to work harder to age her back down. So the daily process ballooned. Some sources say up to 3 hours in the chair before the cameras could even roll. So yes, one of television's most beloved older women was in fact a middle-aged actress getting slightly younger in real life, while the makeup department had to keep making her look slightly older. Only in Hollywood. Number 5. Sophia was terrified every time the cameras rolled. Estelle Getty, the woman who played the sharpest-tongued, most bulletproof grandmother in television history, spent 7 seasons of The Golden Girls quietly battling one of the worst cases of stage fright the cast had ever seen. From the outside, Sophia looked fearless. She marched into rooms, delivered zingers, told Dorothy off, told Blanche off, and once even told off a priest. But inside the wig and the wrinkles, Estelle was struggling. She had spent most of her career doing theater, and by the time she got Golden Girls, she was already in her 60s, breaking into major television with 3 enormously experienced co-stars watching every move. In a 1988 interview, she openly admitted that working alongside stars like Bea Arthur and Betty White made her even more nervous. There were moments during live tapings when she would completely freeze on camera, forgetting where she was in the scene. To cope, she started writing her lines on her hand, on props, on the edge of the table where the camera would not catch it. Sometimes, she would still stumble anyway. What her castmates and crew did not fully understand at the time was that the memory issues were slowly getting worse for a very real medical reason. Years later, Estelle was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, a condition that eventually took her life in 2008 at age 84. Looking back, a lot of the freezing and the forgetting that people once chalked up to nerves was almost certainly the earliest signals of a disease she did not yet know she had, which makes her performance even more remarkable. Every one of those zingers, every eye roll, every picture at Sicily story was Estelle pushing through fear and, unknowingly, through something bigger. That is not just acting. That is grit. Number 4. The Queen Mother demanded her own private Golden Girls show. When the Golden Girls hit its stride in the late 80s, it was not just American grandmas rushing to their sets on Saturday nights. It turned out one of the biggest Golden Girls fans in the entire world was Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother of the United Kingdom. Yes, actual royalty. According to the show's cast and multiple British press reports at the time, the Queen Mother was so obsessed with the Golden Girls that she reached out and requested the cast come to England to perform live for her. Not a red carpet event, not a press junket, a command performance. The performance took place on November 21, 1988, at the London Palladium, as part of the Royal Variety performance, which the Queen Mother attended in person. Bea, Betty, Rue, and Estelle actually flew across the Atlantic to perform a live sketch in character for a room full of royals and dignitaries. But here is the twist. The Golden Girls were famous for their edgy, sometimes very frank humor about sex, dating, and everything the 80s would not normally show on prime time. And that is not exactly what you serve up to the Queen Mother in a Palladium box seat. Bea Arthur told the Orlando Sentinel at the time that the ladies would perform about 7 minutes worth of material, but they were going to have to censor a few things for the Queen. So the writers dialed the Blanche of it all way, way down. What ended up on that stage was a G-rated, cleaned-up, palace-approved version of Dorothy, Rose, Blanche, and Sophia meeting Ronnie Corbett in London and reenacting bits from previous episodes. Meanwhile, the Queen Mother sat there in a tiara, watching 4 American women make her giggle. And somehow, that is exactly on brand for the Golden Girls. Number 3. A Golden Girls writer got actual death threats. Long before Mark Cherry created Desperate Housewives, he was a very young sitcom writer working on The Golden Girls with his writing partner Jamie Wooten. He was in his late 20s, still learning the business, and about to write an episode that would forever prove how brave and how dangerous this show really was. The episode was called Sister of the Bride. It aired on January 12, 1991, in the show's 6th season. Blanche's brother Clayton, played by Monty Markham, had already come out as gay in an earlier season, and now he was showing up in Miami to introduce his boyfriend Doug and announce that they were going to have a commitment ceremony. In 1991, on network television, on a Saturday night. Same-sex marriage was still very much illegal in the United States, and same-sex ceremonies of any kind were still an enormous cultural taboo. Cherry has since said that if his episode was not the first sitcom episode to seriously depict a gay wedding, it was only the second one ever. And a few days after the episode aired, the network called Cherry and Wooten into a meeting. Cherry has recalled the exact line. So you guys are getting death threats. Actual letters, actual threats, actual hate, all landing on desks at NBC because a beloved sitcom about older women in Miami dared to show a gay couple choosing each other. Some of the letters were full of racist and anti-Semitic language too. Cherry, who is gay himself, later joked about the strange logic of the hate mail. But behind the joke, the story is a real reminder of how radical the Golden Girls actually was. 4 supposedly quiet, older women in a Miami living room, punching holes in taboos that the rest of primetime was not brave enough to touch. Number 2. Bea Arthur did not like Betty White at all. On screen, Dorothy and Rose were television's ultimate odd couple. Deadpan and sunshine. Sarcasm and stories about St. Olaf. It looked like effortless chemistry, and in a professional sense, it was. But once the red light went off, according to multiple people who worked on the show, things between Bea Arthur and Betty White were a lot colder than the audience ever knew. Golden Girls co-producer Marsha Posner Williams put it bluntly at a 40th anniversary panel, saying that when the cameras rolled, they were pure professionals. But when the cameras stopped, those two could not warm up to each other if they were cremated together. Casting director Joel Thurm also went on the record in his own book about it, and multiple crew members backed him up. Bea Arthur, in private, reportedly used a very ugly word to describe Betty. The infamous C word. Not once. Not by accident. Repeatedly. Enough that people who worked with her simply expected it. So what was going on? Betty was famously warm with the studio audience. She would break character mid-scene to chat with them, wave, tell a story, blow kisses to sailors in the front row. Bea absolutely hated that. She came from a stage background, where you never break the fourth wall, never wink at the crowd, never step outside the show. She saw Betty's audience interactions as unprofessional, and possibly as a way of hogging attention. Betty herself has publicly acknowledged that Bea was not fond of her, though she always kept the language gentle. Rue McClanahan, ever the diplomat, said Betty was a big fan of Bea, and Bea's feelings simply were not mutual. So no, they were not braiding each other's hair between takes. They were being professional and quietly furious, and giving America 7 of the best sitcom seasons ever recorded. Number 1. Bea Arthur killed the show. In 1992, after 7 wildly successful seasons, the Golden Girls signed off. Dorothy got married in the finale, moved out, and hugged her family goodbye. It felt like a natural, graceful, tear-jerker ending. What most fans do not know is that the show was not supposed to end at all. NBC wanted more Golden Girls. The other 3 actresses wanted more Golden Girls. The audience wanted more Golden Girls. There was really only one obstacle, and her name was Bea Arthur. According to co-producer Marsha Posner Williams, when the executives sat down with the cast to talk about a possible Season 8, they went around the room. Estelle Getty said, "Yes, let us keep going." Rue McClanahan said, "Yes, let us keep going." Betty White said, "Yes, let us keep going." And then Bea said, quote, "No effing way." Not a polite pass, not a diplomatic maybe, a hard, absolutely final no. She was done. Bea had been ready to move on for a while. 7 seasons is a long time to play the same character, especially on a set where she was not exactly friends with everyone. She was reportedly tired of the grind. tired of the tensions off camera, tired of Betty's audience banter, tired of the whole treadmill. So when they came to her with contracts for another year, she was ready with her answer. The other three did not want it to end there. So NBC quickly retooled everything into a spin-off called The Golden Palace, keeping Betty, Rue, and Estelle as the same characters running a Miami hotel, minus Dorothy. It lasted exactly one season before it collapsed. Meanwhile, Bea walked away with an Emmy, an American Treasure resume, and 0 regrets. Sometimes the biggest reason a beloved show ends is not the network, not the ratings, not the writers. It is one woman at the kitchen table who decided that 7 was enough. And there you have it. 15 wild, weird, and wonderful facts about the Golden Girls. From a housekeeper who vanished into thin air, to a queen who demanded a private show, to a leading lady who quietly pulled the plug on one of the biggest sitcoms of all time. Which fact shocked you the most? Which one did you already know? And which Golden Girls story did we absolutely miss? Drop it all in the comments, because we love hearing which of these classic shows you actually grew up watching. If you want more deep dives into the stars, the sets, and the secrets of the shows you remember, make sure to hit subscribe and stick around. We have got plenty more where this came from. And until next time, thank you for being a friend.